Welcome to the Supplement Engineer Podcast. My name is Robert Chinetsky. Joining us today, the Vice President of Sales for Nutrition21, Mr. Todd Spear. Todd, thank you for joining us today. How are you, man?
Good. Thanks for having me on. I'm excited to do this. If anybody's seen me do these before, you know I'm not very good at them, so I'm hoping that I'll improve.
I think you're being a little harsh on yourself. I've listened to your interviews with Mike and with Shane before, and I mean, you are by far from being extremely awkward. I've done a bunch of these interviews over the years, and there are some people I have to claw answers out of, and it just makes for a really dry, a really boring interview. And so listeners don't know this, but you and I were talking for 5 or 10 minutes before we fired this thing up officially, and it's going to be smooth sailing. I feel
Well, I always joke, for somebody who makes their living at public speaking, I'm actually pretty terrible at it.
So let's get a little bit, anytime I have a guest on the show for the first time, I kind of like to get their origin story, their background. And so you've been with Nutrition21 for almost 10 years now. So how did you, get into this crazy world that we know and love as the supplement industry, and kind of, what is it about Nutrition21 specifically that you've had such a tenure with them?
Well, so I started in the natural products industry in I can't remember right now. It's either 2000 or 2001. Mm-hmm. I was joking with Shane that my career is now of drinking age, and which is kind of funny in and of itself. But yeah, so I started out on product development and formulation. I did that for a couple small supplement brands initially, two of them my family had started and sold, and then from there I went and worked I stayed at one of the companies when it went to new owners, and that's a story in and of itself. It's the only company I've ever been fired from twice.
That takes skill.
It does. I was going to say, the other thing was, and it's kind of funny too, because I would argue that in both cases it was more political than anything else.
Gotcha.
Yeah, so I worked for this brand. I went on with it, with the new owners, but we didn't see eye to eye on the way things were going, and parted ways. And then they kind of wrecked the freight train, and it had been bought by private equity, and so I was brought back to kind of help right the business as part of a management team, and we did that. And then basically, despite having a lot of success, they decided they wanted to go a different way, and I was let go, and they wrecked the freight train again. And I was like, I'm not coming back a third time. Cannot get fired from the same job 3 times. But yeah, so that's when I came to Nutrition21 about 10 years ago. And it's kind of a funny story. I actually was talking with one of my professors from college that I kept in touch with. And I let him know, I just kind of partially on a whim, I was like, if you know anybody, here's my resume, I'm looking. And it turns out that his cousin was 21, Mike Satow's wife. And so Jim Martin, the professor, sent my resume to Mike Satow, and Mike was like, yeah, let's have a conversation. And long story short, I came to Nutrition21 in January of 13, I believe. And I was, the junior sales guy, and worked my way up as opportunity. I managed, we went through a couple VPs of sales, and there was basically an opportunity opened, and I said, hey, I want this position, and here's my plan, and I got, they promoted me, and it seems to have worked out well. That was 18, I think, 17 or 18. I became VP, and yeah, I mean that's the, I would say, nickel tour of my career, but it was fairly long.
Yeah. No, it's interesting. And so as a junior sales guy, kind of working up the ranks to where you are now as the VP of sales, I've worked with different people in the industry, and they're in the sales thing, but for the consumers that may not be sure, is there much difference in, like, if you're in sales in the sports nutrition industry versus like sales for an engineering firm or a tech company, or like, what's kind of the day-to-day stuff? Are you interacting more with brands one-on-one, or more of maybe the materials acquisition team at contract manufacturers?
So for us, where we do branded ingredients, I talk to very few buyers. I do almost all my sales to R&D teams. And so really, the only other thing I've ever sold besides dietary supplements is the sales process is largely the same. It's a lot longer in a supplement because, someone wants to buy a bike, they walk in, like, hey, let me test drive a couple bikes, and they walk out the door with a bike, right? Well, no one walks out the door with Nitrosigine, so to speak. So they've got to develop a product, and that on the short side takes maybe 9 months. But, the bigger the brand, the longer it takes. You start working with some really large CPG brands, you're looking 2-3 years that you're working on a project. So I think from that standpoint, it can be very different. It's when you're selling a component as opposed to a finished good. It's a very different I mean, look, selling's all the same in my mind. Like, you got to know your product. You should like your product. It's very hard to sell something, at least if you're ethical. It's hard to sell something if you don't believe in it. It's about building relationships and helping people see where there's an opportunity, in my case, to use our ingredient. And so over the years, that's kind of what I've done. I've built relationships with people and said, here's the science we have, and this is why you should use it. And from my standpoint, it's a pretty easy sale because we have a lot of good data. I think, if I were selling a commodity, like if I were just selling citrulline, I think that's a lot harder, right? Because now it's just like, what price do I own it at? How much money do I need to make, right? And I know, like, people on that, and their standpoint is like, hey man, if I can make $50 on a sale, I'm going to do it. Because it's all about churning through it. And that's not to diminish it, but I think that that's a very different experience. And for me, I don't think I would find that kind of negotiation, that kind of sales, very stimulating. Whereas what I do now, I get to work with a lot of different, interesting people. A lot of the time I'm sitting there and we're bouncing ideas back and forth. And so my background in product development is pretty useful because, I can come up with, some ideas and bounce those off to people. Like the other day, I was talking to a customer that's, starting a functional coffee product. And I was like, oh, have you considered this? And I, was able to pitch an idea. And I was like, you could do like a cafe de olla, but have it be related to weight loss. And, and sometimes people take those ideas and run with them. And it's kind of like, man, I wish I had kept that one for myself. But
yeah, it's kind of like a royalty on the thing, or like,
I know. It's like, I could have royalty, but that's okay. You get the sale. That's the important part. And it's kind of fun to just see it happen. And honestly, the thing about product development is there's a lot of pain in the butt stuff, right? It's the process, dotting your I's, crossing your T's. Like, it's a lot of work, and it's a lot easier to say, hey, here's an idea, than it is to actually bring that idea to market. Like, bringing an idea to market is really quite hard. And I don't think people who haven't done product development understand that.
Yeah. Yeah, it's always fun when you get to work on a formula and you think, all right, I've got this. This is going to be the best thing. You give it to the brand, or the brand comes out and they start analyzing, and they realize, all right, well, this product's $20 cost of goods. That means we're going to have to sell this between like $50 and $60 to just make this a sustainable model. And then you realize, all right, well, at which point then you have to start choosing between your favorite children. Which one do you want to just like eliminate or sell off?
Yeah.
Can I use that? So it's easy to kind of like sit back and say, well, they should have included this. They should have included this. And then you realize you got to kind of go down the wormhole a little bit and see there's shipping costs, like the ingredients, like for example, nitrosigine. You mentioned citrulline a few minutes ago. Citrulline might be cheaper, or used to be cheaper, I would say probably on a per gram basis, but then you factor in the weight. You need 6 to 8 grams of citrulline to match 1,500 milligrams of nitrosigine. So is the cost of the ingredient justified by the offsetting cost that you're going to save in shipping that much amount of material based on however many thousands of units? And so you got to start doing all this mental gymnastics to justify which way are we going to go, or is there like a complementary synergistic action if we combine maybe half dosages of both of the ingredients?
Yeah, and it's interesting that you use that comparison, because for most of my career, nitrosigine, it's a premium product. It's got all this research and patents that's expensive to develop, and citrulline's been, they're cheap, like $7 a kilo, right?
Yeah.
Well, at that point, you could, and by the way, people were only using at the time like 3-4 grams, and it was more expensive to use nitrosigine.
Mm-hmm.
But now, particularly when you see this compelling data out of University of Arkansas, 8 grams of citrulline malate is to equate or equal 1.5 grams of nitrosigine.
Yeah.
Well, all of a sudden, once you're like at $20 a kilo for citrulline, it's cheaper to use nitrosigine, and you get this list of benefits, right? There's a list of claims that you can make.
Yep.
To my knowledge, there's no claim on cognitive function on citrulline. There may be a benefit, but I haven't seen any studies,
Right.
documenting that. So, I think that it's been a weird kind of last year, because all of a sudden we're no longer fighting but you're more expensive.
Right.
It's now like, we cost the same, sometimes less, depending on, where the citrulline market is.
Mm-hmm.
And obviously I'm biased, but I think my product's better.
Yeah. I mean, it's just, that's one of the main, I guess, benefits or kind of cool things is that you guys have done your own in-house research, and that's kind of something I'd like to get a little bit more into first. But the University of Arkansas study, they carried that out at their own behest. That wasn't something you guys had contracted them to do. So y'all didn't know about this until after the fact.
No, we found out like a week before it was going to be presented. It was presented at ISSN, I don't know what, 3 years ago. Mm-hmm. And we found out like a week beforehand that this paper had been done. And like when someone first said like, oh, they compared it to 8 grams of citrulline, I was like, well, shit, that's not going to look good, right? Like, how could 1.5 grams of ours be equal to, 1.5 grams of nitrosigine be equal or better than 8 grams of anything?
Right.
That was kind of my thought. And then we found out it was, oh no, like these are statistically equal. And if you look at the numbers, it's actually nominally, it's, more effective. And I was just like, wow, this is a game changer.
Yeah.
But it was, like I said, when I first heard about it, that wasn't like, oh, I can't wait to see how this came out, because I didn't think it was going to like come out in my favor. I mean, the number, 5.5 times more material, like I would have never guess that you would have an equivalency.
Yeah, I would agree with that. When y'all are doing these studies, so y'all have some of the research with that. Do y'all have an in-house research team? Do y'all use various like contract research organizations?
So
how does that work when y'all are carrying out the different studies?
we have an R&D department, but they don't do clinical research. We go to CROs, like CAHS. That's Hector Lopez and Tim Ziegenfuss, and they have a team of researchers in-house that they use, and it can and it's nice because they did work on Velositol with us, and they're able to reach out to Arnie Ferrando, who's arguably one of the guest guys on protein uptake and utilization, to work on our study, right? But then there actually, over the years, there's been some stuff, like just recently we published a study on nooLVL that was done kind of in-house. It used this third-party software called Cambridge. Well, of course, now I forgot the name. Cambridge Brain Sciences, I think is what it's called. And it's like an online cognitive test. And so you just had to sign up, volunteers that had, to meet the criteria. And then they, it's an open label test, right? Because they know whether or not they're taking the nooLVL. Yeah. And then, send it out to a statistician, run the stats, and then, kind of write the paper. But really for 99% of the time, we're working with CROs. And frankly, it's no different than pharmaceuticals. And it always strikes me as funny as people say, well, you paid for your study. I'm like, well, Pfizer paid for their studies. Like, how is that different? Nobody questions whether or not, Zoloft and Prozac work, but all their research was done, by the pharmaceutical companies that market them, right?
Right.
The new vaccine was, the COVID vaccine was developed by pharmaceutical and tested by pharmaceutical companies. Yeah, experts had to look at it, but it's the same thing. Like, if you want to do a study and get it published in any kind of reputable journal, like, there's a body that is going to look at your data and your paper and, evaluate what you're saying. You can't just cook. I mean, I suppose you can cook the books and get past people some of the times, but that's pretty rare when that happens, I think. I mean, if you look at the history of academic research, there's very few cases of people cooking the books and getting away with it.
Yeah, that's a really good point. It's an issue I've brought up several times over the years with podcasts, either with different researchers or formulators or brandos, that there's this weird kind of thing that you were touching on with supplement research. I mean, it's not like the NIH or the FDA are giving us millions and millions of dollars to conduct these studies. The money has to come from somewhere, and very few actual supplement companies are making enough profit to where they can just go shell out $50,000, $100,000, $150,000 for a trial. So the money's got to come from somewhere. So it's got to come from ingredient houses like you guys.
And here's the thing: it has to be. You have to own. You have to have intellectual property. You have to have a patent on that, right? If I go do a study on citrulline, well, anybody who sells it's a generic, so anybody who's selling generic citrulline can point to that. Well, why am I going to spend $500,000 on a study that everybody else gets to sell on? There's no benefit to me, right? Whereas like Nitrosigine, we own the patent. We're the only company that sells, Nitrosigine, and they can sell Nitrosigine. So yeah, I can make an investment into that product. And, we have millions of dollars tied up in clinical research on all of our ingredients. And, people will say, well, people ask, like, why is your product so expensive? It's like, well, you got to pay for that research somehow, right? You just, and like, I guess I could, say, well, I spent, $2 million on research in this product. If you want to use it, you got to kick in $50,000. Or I can say, you have to pay, this much a kilo, and I average out the cost of that study over time. And obviously that's what we do.
Yeah.
So,
and another important thing is y'all don't just do a one-off and say, hey, we got one study on this ingredient, we're never doing anything else, which is such a problem with so many of these branded ingredients on the market. They'll come with one, maybe two, and in my opinion, weak studies. But you guys have upwards of 15 studies now for nitrosigine?
Yeah. Gosh, it's a moving target, it feels like. I think
there's a bunch.
There's, I think, now 10 clinical studies, plus, there's animal cell lines and safety. We add all that in, I think it's closer to 30 studies. And that's one of the things that I criticize. I generally don't criticize my competition. But the one thing that I will say is a lot of times I see products being marketed on cell line studies or animal studies, and that's just, it's not the same thing. And first of all, it's not, according to the FDA, you can't make claims on animal studies and cell line studies, right? The standard is competent and reliable scientific evidence. And that, when you get into it, means clinical data, studies in humans. And, we are different from a lot of companies in that, that's the other thing. I saw a study for a pump product recently that was done on like 8 people, right? It's like,
yeah, there's the listeners probably know to which ingredient you're referring, because I've lambasted it numerous times.
I thought I was being sneaky. I assume there will be another study, and shit, I regret saying that because I like the people behind the product. I think that they probably have a good product. But right now, their initial study is a little thin. But that's, typically the nature of first studies are kind of small. Pilot studies are small. You want to see if there's a response.
Yeah. No, there's a certain ingredient that makes some rather egregious claims on the amount of nitric oxide percentage it can increase, and I have taken that
one too. Yeah,
that's the one that I usually go after. There was another one, I don't want to name specifics, but let's just say their marker for assessing how effective for blood flow, they took the patient's hands, stuck it in cold water, then gave them the treatment, stuck it back in the cold water, and saw how much the blood flow changed and how not cold their hand got because of an increase in blood flow based off this little extract they were taking. And that was their big marker for improvements in blood flow.
I am not familiar with that product.
I'll send you the name of it after this.
Okay. I hadn't seen that one. I'm not going to say, I'm not a scientist. I'm not going to opine as to whether or not that is an efficacious way of testing it. I imagine they used a validated method. I'm going to leave it at that. But, here's the thing. Look, there is absolutely a place for pilot studies. There's absolutely a place for animal and cell line studies. I just don't like it when that's all you got and that's what you're making your claims on.
Agreed.
I just don't. Look, it's kind of like if brands are willing to accept that, I guess more power to you. My argument is that it's a bit deceptive, and I see it as kind of unfair competition, right? Because I guess it really isn't, because they're not necessarily claiming to have something more they are. But I once had, and if he's watching, he'll know that I'm talking about. Someone compare, an ingredient, and he's like, "Oh, I like so and so because they have such great studies." I'm like, "What are you talking about? They only have cell line studies. They're not even in whole animals. They're just in cells." I'm like, that's not to say that the results weren't good in a cell line study, but come on, you got to have the clinical too.
Absolutely. With these branded ingredients, company owners are often vetting your ingredients, whether they want to consider them for inclusion in their products. At the same time, you guys get to vet those people that are coming to you saying, hey, we would like to use your material. But at the same, so what's the kind of the process that you guys go through at Nutrition21 for whether you want to actually allow them to use your material and use your logo on their products or in their advertising and stuff like that?
I don't like to say no, but I will say no. And but what I typically do is I say you can't use these non-compliant ingredients with our ingredient. And every once in a while, someone sneaks one past, like contract manufacturer didn't let us know this product was coming to market. They didn't get the license. We didn't get a label review. You know, the license and the label review are supposed to prevent that. But I don't, having come from the side of product development, I've had companies say, no, you're not big enough. We don't want you to use our product. You can't use our logo. Everybody's small eventually. Like every big company started out small. When I started with working with Ghost, 4.5 years ago, they were pretty small.
Yeah.
Did I know that they were going to be, the 800-pound gorilla? No, but I liked them. And I thought that they were bringing something unique and doing things different. So I was glad to partner with them.
Yeah.
So, I think that by virtue of the fact that we say, hey, you can't use I don't let people use, I'm terrible pronouncing these names, hordenine, what's the other one that starts with an H?
Hygenamine?
Hygenamine, right. Hygenamine. For years I've been saying, you can't use those with our ingredients. Basically, Banned Substance Control Group, I don't know if you know them, Oliver Catlin's the president, and years ago he created a list of ingredients that were being marketed as supplements that he didn't believe met the definition, and he gives an explanation as why. And I've largely used that in the dietary supplement advisory list that the FDA puts out. That's like, if the ingredients, I'm not gonna let them be used. The one that I think is a real growing problem is detonol, isopropyl phenylphedrine. Seeing that Peter Cohen a year ago published a paper where they went on the NIH supplement label database, which is an interesting thing. It's a voluntary list for companies to publish their labels, and they put them online and list the ingredients, and it's searchable. And I think it actually shows a lack of understanding about what's allowed and what isn't, because people will go on there and they list their label with illegal ingredients. And so Peter Cohen did publish his paper like a year ago, I think early 2001.
Yeah, I remember covering it.
And it listed like 17 brands that were using fentanyl. And now if you go on there and look, I just looked at it a few weeks ago, and there's like 30 brands using it. The FDA has known for 4 years that this is not a dietary supplement. This is a drug that has been banned because of cardiac. FDA hasn't done anything, and it's like, I didn't mean to take the conversation in the way of this, the new Durbin bill, whatever it is, S4090, I think it is, mandatory product labeling, which isn't mandatory product labeling, it's pre-market approval. But it's not, it doesn't address the problem, which is the FDA isn't enforcing things.
Correct. Yeah.
I mean,
and that's
look, everybody's got access to Google. You can go on Google and put in the name of whatever, would be, ingredient is, whatever illegal ingredient, and you'll get results. And, that's all they have to do. If I can find them, they can find them.
Yeah, agreed. And my view on what Cohen has done over the years has kind of shifted from, kind of across the spectrum, because his method of testing some of the things for the illegal substances, I get a little, it's kind of like he's going randomly and picking products off the shelf. He's not getting them directly from the manufacturers, or he's using outdated products, and there could be 2 or 3 cycles behind on the thing. And so it creates all this brouhaha over a product or ingredient that may not be as, ubiquitous in the industry as it once was or something. But he came out and actually trashed that Durbin bill pretty hard the other day.
He did.
Or last week maybe or so. Just saying it's frivolous, it's unnecessary, it's going to add a bunch of extra money that we don't need to be spending on it. So
I think not only is it costly, but it's actually going to make the FDA less effective, because they're going to have to basically develop this database in this process. And then, there's the pre-approval aspect of it, right? The bill language makes it very clear that the FDA is going, I guess there's some question. It doesn't specify it, and I suppose there's room for interpretation. But as I read it, the FDA, if they choose not to give you an approval to your label, you can't bring that product to market legally, right? That's pre-market approval. Medical devices have that. Medical devices get to make health claims. Yeah. We don't get to make health claims. We get to make structure function claims. They're very different things.
Correct. Yeah. With that, okay, so let's say if a brand is using non-kosher ingredients, let's say, and I don't mean kosher in the actual strict sense, but stuff, persona non grata kind of ingredients around the industry. Is it
right?
Yeah. So is it the fact that they can't use it in the same product, or maybe they're using it in like a stem bomb pre-workout and they just want to put this in some kind of non-stem pump powder?
So I would rather they not have it in their other products, but specifically I care about what is combined with our ingredients, right? Because here's the reason why. People know and trust our brand. They see Nutrition21's ingredient on there. There's a bit of a proxy. Hey, nitrosigine means quality, right? Yep. I don't want to combine with something that can hurt them. That's my reason. I suppose, because really from a legal standpoint, once I sell my ingredient, I don't really have control over what it gets combined with. And from a legal standpoint, say they combined it with something blatantly illegal and the product gets pulled off the market. Well, there's no legal recourse against me because I didn't produce that product. I just supplied one of the components, right? And, ostensibly, I didn't have any visibility as to what is going to be combined with. Yeah. So that's not my concern. My concern is that people, consumers view our ingredients as a proxy for quality, and that we are giving some level of tacit approval to that product. Right. That's why I don't like these gray area ingredients. Is the last thing I'd ever want to do is, have somebody use a product because it's got nitrosigine in it and they get hurt. Yeah. And like I said, Dentronol, the reason it's banned like almost universally in almost every country because of severe cardiac risk. It's like
well, let's just throw it in a pre-workout with 6 other stimulants. It makes common sense.
Yeah. Look, I am not oblivious to the fact that a lot of the workout industry is about vanity, right? And we're all I used to have hobbies and used to be fit before I had kids. Now I joke my hobby is being out of shape. Believe me, I know what it's like to try to lose weight. It sucks. And I can see where, if I thought taking, testosterone was going to help make me ripped, like without any effort, I will probably sign up for it.
Yeah.
But there's also the health risks, right?
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, for everybody, it's weighing those things. And I think that the thing is a consumer, a lot of the times when you're looking at a product on the market, your assumption is it's going to be safe.
Yeah.
And when you throw things in that product that are inherently not safe, I think that's a real disservice to consumers in general, and health, right? Like, I feel bad for the person that's going to take a pre-workout because they want to work out harder and get more in shape, and then they have something bad happen, right? You look back at the DMA days where people were getting, you know, liver damage and liver failure. That's awful. That shouldn't happen because you're trying to get healthy.
Yeah. Agreed.
That's the exact opposite of what we want.
Yeah, and it's those kind of instances that kind of mar the entire industry. It's like, it's something my dad used to say, it takes one oh shit to ruin 1,000 attaboys. So if you get one or two bad faith actors in the industry, it's ruining or kind of tarnishing the reputation, or, you know, any ground we might gain in people believing that natural products can benefit them in some form or fashion. Maybe not comparable to a pharmaceutical, but trending in that direction at least.
Yep. And honestly, like, I talk with some of the other, you know, stakeholders in the branded ingredient space, because I'll see their branded ingredient, you know, and basically I tell, you know, someone comes to me, they've got a product with nitrosigine and whatever gray market in that. I tell them, I say, look, I'm not telling you how to run your business, but you can't use nitrosigine in this ingredient. You got to choose which one.
Yeah.
It's your call as to which one you want to use, but you can't use mine in combination with that. If you want to ditch my ingredient and just use this illegal stem, that's your choice.
Yeah.
I think it's as fair as I can be. But what bothers me is that I will see other branded ingredients in with these, you know, products that, you know, in my view, are inherently not safe, right? Because, and let's be honest, it's also, it creates an unfair advantage against people who are following the regulations.
Right.
And so I think that if every stakeholder, brand owner would say, hey, you can't use my branded ingredient with these, you know, gray area things, it would be, you would see a lot less of them, because it would be, you know, just, you know, generic ingredients with the dangerous stuff. And then, you know, it kind of goes back to the, you know, I mentioned this when I was talking with Shane the other day. It's like, anytime I mention to somebody I work in the dietary supplement industry, like, I know how the next 20 minutes of the conversation is going to go.
Yeah.
Like, how do I know it's good? How, you know, it's all about, like, how do I interpret labels? How do I know this is a good product? Well, one of the things I always tell people is, like, look for branded ingredients, you know, because they are a proxy for quality. Like, if somebody's going to spend more for a branded ingredient, they're probably not cutting corners on manufacturing. They're probably putting, you know, the whole amount in there, because they know, like, every product, you know, that's using nitrosigine, they know that we're at some point going to be testing to make sure that what they say is in there matches the label.
Yeah. Kind of along the lines of the other ingredient houses, and I guess the relationship between Nutrition21 and the other, I don't know if, do y'all view it as like a family of people trying to bring high quality, reputable products to market? Do y'all kind of just stay in your own area and say, hey, this is what we're doing, whatever anybody else is doing, that's fine? Just how do y'all kind of view, or I guess in your thing, like, are you viewing them as competitors, or are y'all trying to raise the overall tide and kind of lift all ships mentality, or is it more of like an ingredient basis?
It depends on, you know, the parent company. I, in general, get along with everybody. I don't trash other people's products. I don't say, my product is better, I sell on the strengths of my product.
Right.
In general, I can't think of an ingredient supplier that I don't get along with. Compound Solutions, usually at a trade show, Matt and I will sit down for a drink. He's a good guy. Yep. He's doing a lot of good things. The former president of ChemiNutra, who does Alpha Size, yep. Scott Hagerman, we used to chat all the time. There's a lot of people. I mean, most of the sales people, we know each other. Even when there's competing ingredient, even if they're selling a competing ingredient, we'll help people make that connection. Maybe not if it's like directly competition. Like, I mean, there's got to be a little bit there, but like, right. There's definitely some teamwork. Like, oh yeah, you've got to talk to this person. She's awesome. She's going to get you in the door, blah, blah, blah. So I would say in my experience, it's very collegial. I can't speak for everybody, and I've only done this for like 10 years, and I don't know what it was like before I did it. I know the first time I met Matt Titlow, we were at LA Fit Expo, and we were chit-chatting, and I was like, oh, I work with this company. Yeah, I can connect you, connect you to somebody. And he was really surprised. He's like, really? I was like, yeah, why not? Like, at that time, we didn't, that was, when he had Vaso 6, we were competing a little, but even still, like, it was a very different product. And I don't know how many times people were buying or choosing Vaso 6 over Nitrosigine. It was usually like they were together.
Yeah, well, they work on kind of like their end result is the same, but the mechanisms of attacking are slightly different or complementary, even, I would say, where you could easily put both of them together.
Absolutely. And we look at pre-workouts, there's usually a few different like pump ingredients, because here's the thing, like there's pretty much with every ingredient, every pharmaceutical, there's non-responders to certain things, right? Yeah. So if you want a good pump product or pre-workout, it makes sense to have an array of ingredients, because it's then going to have more effects for, it's going to affect a wider audience of people. Plus, like you said, you can get synergistic effects going, right? Yeah. So have I lost out to, competing ingredients where maybe I made an introduction? Probably. It's not the end of the day. There's plenty, it's a big enough pie to go around.
Agreed. As far as the branded ingredients, everybody is pretty familiar with Nitrosigine, nooLVL, Velositol to a certain extent. How do y'all go about differentiating, since they're so close in composition, Nitrosigine and nooLVL? And so for the listeners that may not entirely be clear on the difference, there's an additional 100 milligrams of inositol in nooLVL, correct? Yeah,
and there is. And I think that there's a perception among some people that, Nutrition21 threw in this 100 milligrams of inositol just to make it sound different and call it a different name. But that's not the case. We got a patent on that combination. The reason we got a patent on that combination was we did research and we looked at a variety of different doses of inositol. And we saw that, we started, I don't even remember anymore, but probably down around 20, 25 milligrams additional, and went all the way up to 1,000 milligrams. And for whatever reason, we thought that you were going to have to take like 1,000 milligrams of additional inositol to see a difference. And it wasn't the case. It did not work as well as 100 milligrams. That's why we were issued a patent. For some reason, and I'm not smart enough to tell you what that reason is, there was this sweet spot at 100 milligrams. And like I said, if you know anything about the patent process, it's got to be something novel. You've got to make a novel discovery, basically, in order to get a patent. And I guess that's a detail that people are missing is we got a patent because we showed that this is different. Yes, it has the same base ingredient, but we've made it work better in this particular cognitive realm. and we were granted a patent as a result. So the way I talk to people is, well, first, I often tell that story when people are asking me what the difference is. But the real difference is in the populations in which we did the study, right? So if you look at the population in nitrosigine, it's done in, traditional athletes, healthy, active people, whereas nooLVL is done in esports athletes. They, again, young, healthy normals, but the people are doing video games and taking cognitive tests. It's different than, even the cognitive studies we've done on nitrosigine. One of the studies we did, we exercised people to exhaustion. We wanted to see what the effects of nitrosigine were on reducing cognitive decline due to physical fatigue. And the basic study model was, you do your baseline, you take your supplementation, whether you're placebo or active, then you do baseline again, and then they had to run on a treadmill for a period of I think 15 minutes. Then they had a 3-minute recovery. They did that again. They have a period of recovery, and then they run. Actually, me not being a limbo, I don't remember if it was time or to exhaustion, but they were spent at the end of the third one. And as soon as they came off, here's your test. They sit down and do the cognitive tests, and you can the difference between the nitrosigine group and the placebo group is phenomenal. It's 50-some% difference in reduction of cognitive decline. And you take that, and I always say, look at football, right? By and large, interceptions don't happen in the first quarter. They happen in the third and fourth quarter.
When you're mentally and physically fatigued. Exactly.
That quarterback's been making decisions, hard, fast, quick decisions for a while. Of course, when they're more fatigued, they're more likely to have errors. There's actually a term for it. It's called quarterback decline. Wait, there is a term for it. Now it's blank. It's like quarterback decline or something like that. Quarterback fade. Now, imagine that person has taken nitrosigine that showed, after an hour of strenuous exercise, you got 50% less errors cognitively, right? I don't know if that's going to make a difference between a pick or not, but it seems like it could. Yeah. I haven't done a study in football players, so I wouldn't make the claim that we're going to make you play football better. But in the gamers, it's actually right. You do baseline tests, and you supplement people, and they play video games for an hour, and then you give them tests again, and you see how did they did. It's these cognitive tests. There's a number of. We've done 3 different studies now looking at different cognitive tests, and everything from trail making. Stroop test, which is, I think, one of my favorites. I don't know if you're familiar with it, but I like it because it's so hard. I can't even remember all the other tests right now. There was the most recent study at the University of Arkansas was done on immediate memory. It's the R brands. It's basically an IQ test, right? If you look at it, it is almost identical to the IQ tests, and there's 27% improvement, and these were in young people.
Yeah. 18 to 32-year-olds in the new, the most recent test.
Right, and there's other cognitive products out there that work very, very well, but they're typically not done in a gaming population. Let alone in young people. There's a very good product out there. I won't name it, but You know, the only criticism I have of it is it was designed to go towards seniors, right? So is that even relevant to gaming? I mean, that's not to say that there aren't 50 and 6-year-olds playing video games, but I don't think that's the target demographic.
Correct. No, I would agree with that. And that's another good thing I actually like about these ingredients. I know a lot of listeners at this point are saying he's just fanboying over the ingredients, but like when the time is right, I will knock an ingredient because the science is weak. And I've done that plenty of times. But when there's a quality ingredient and you guys aren't just testing it in elderly, out of shape, diabetic, obese individuals that haven't, done more than a 10-minute walk.
The people they're easy to get a result in, right?
Right. Yeah, that's what the vast majority of research, and granted, a significant portion of the world's population is overweight and metabolically unhealthy, and
Absolutely.
So, and I understand that, but at the same time, those of us that aren't and are taking measures to make sure we're fit mentally and physically and cardiometabolically and all that other good stuff, we want to know these ingredients which show improvements in the most unfit people, that they're going to have a similar order of magnitude of effect in us too, because great, maybe some grapeseed extract will improve blood pressure markers in somebody that doesn't exercise, doesn't help, but will those same effects carry over to somebody that is moderately young, fit, healthy, active, has low stress levels and all that? And that's what's good about the research that you guys are doing in some of the other ingredient houses. You're finding fit, active people on the lower end of the age spectrum, and finding improvements as well. And so that's to y'all's credit.
And really, you want healthy normals. I once saw a study on a weight loss product in collegiate wrestlers, evaluating change in body composition. Well, these guys had 2% body fat to begin with. Of course you didn't see a result.
Right.
I mean, come on, you can only get your body fat so low. It's just this is the stupidest study I've ever seen. They clearly wanted it to fail.
Yeah,
right?
Exactly.
I remember another one years ago when resveratrol was the it ingredient. So this is 2006. Well, this person that did the study, they used a 50% resveratrol from Japanese knotweed, right? So it was 50% resveratrol and 50% crap, whatever else was in there. And that's not to say that it was necessarily bad stuff, but there were other actives. And I remember being at this conference and an attendee standing up and saying, you completely botched this study by using this ingredient because you didn't test resveratrol, you tested Japanese knotweed.
Yeah.
And I don't think before that was pointed out to the researcher that the researcher saw the error that they had made. And of course that person was absolutely right. And so I think that, anytime you're looking at the study, this is completely off topic, I apologize.
No.
Anytime you're looking at a study, is it the relevant population? Am I represented in some way in this population, right? If I'm testing a woman's health product, I sure don't want to do it in men. But I mean, that one's pretty obvious, right? But you should be looking, when you read a scientific study, you should be looking, I think, first and foremost, is this population a population that is representative of the target audience? And is it possible to see a change? Like the example I gave with the collegiate wrestlers, right? Well, of course. I mean, these guys had literally started out with 2% body fat. Literally, it said in the study they had 2% body fat. We didn't see a significant change in body composition. Like, well, duh.
Yeah, you can't really go down.
There's
essential levels of body fat you need.
Yeah, and by the way, 2% is about as low as you can possibly go, right? Really, I think I'm not a nutrition or health expert, but somewhere along the line, I remember hearing for a young male, really 10, 12% is kind of like that ideal range, right?
Yeah.
So to be down at 2%, that's crazy low.
Yeah, I mean, that's where professional physique athletes, bodybuilders, and the bikini models and all them, that's what the levels they get down to for a few hours.
Yeah.
And then they bounce right back up because you can't sustain that over the long term. I mean, you look at some of the elite, the truly elite, like linebackers, receivers, safety out there. I mean, those guys are shredded to the bone, and they've got such a high activity level, and obviously the genetic component at play because they're just physical freaks in the best way possible.
Right.
But even still, obviously, depending on which method of body composition analysis, were they doing DEXA, were they doing it on a bod pod, were they using calipers or one of those little bioelectrical impedance devices, which can be pretty, suspect depending on, how it's using. Is it 4-point, is it 2-point, and all of that stuff. But I mean, still, when you get down to that low level, you're not going to see a tremendous fat loss from like 500 milligrams of XYZ ingredient. It's not physiologically possible.
Yeah, I mean, really, when you think about like collegiate wrestlers, like when they're making weight, they're dehydrating to make weight, right? And same with boxers and ultimate fighters, because their body fat is too low, so they're spending all their time. They're not losing body fat, to make weight. They're literally losing water,
right,
to make weight. And there was a time in UFC where they would make weight, and then they're allowed to get IVs afterwards to get rehydrated. And I know that and that might be in other sports too. I've had a conversation about this, but I know that has since been banned because it's not even fair, right? To lose 10 pounds of water and then put it back on, right before your fight.
Because if you should be fighting at 170, and let's say you're the scrawny guy trying to get up to 170, and then you've got the 220-pound guy. That's probably an over-exaggeration. You got the 190-pound guy dropping 20 pounds, and then he can, fuel back up. I mean, it's David versus Goliath at that point.
Yeah. So I'm not sure how we got on that side topic.
I think we started with ingredient research and healthy individuals, and we kind of veered off.
That's the problem of talking with me, is that I go off on tangents.
No, man, that's what's great. That's why I like these long form styles. Either the writing I do, it's not the short little quick hit stuff. I like nuance and just kind of let it flow and free wherever it goes. That's what I love about the podcast format. It's not of, hey, who are you? Who do you work for? What does your daddy do? And then we'll see you next week. Bye. I mean, it's like we can do whatever you want to talk about. Your favorite, like toenail clippers, we can talk about that. We can talk about anything. A couple of questions. Are you going to be at Supply Side West in October?
Oh yeah. That's a do not miss. I tell anybody involved in the industry, if you only go to one show, that's the one you should go to, in my opinion.
So I'm planning to head out there. I haven't been since 2019. Me and Sandy went, and so we're gonna. I'm definitely gonna try and make it out there this year. I'm not sure if
it was great. It was attendance was down, but everybody that was there was like ready to do business. It was the highest quality interactions. You didn't have the trying to collect information so they could create the knockoff version of your product, or just people. They're like, was that person high? Like, they're asking such weird questions. Expo, by the way, is the worst. That we did a booth one year at Expo, and like the randos that you had walking up it was breathtaking. And it's just like, oh my God, what was that person on? Like, and then there's always certain people you always see at every trade show, like certain people, types of person. People that walk up, and one of my favorite is the person, the guy or girl that wants to demonstrate their knowledge, and so they come in and they ask you a question when they already know the answer, and they kind of quizzing you. See that guy over there, that girl over there? They want to talk to me too. Don't waste my time.
Right.
You didn't have any of that. You didn't have any of that. It was everybody that was there was like, boom, boom, boom. They were legit. They were interested. It was in the fact that I think it wasn't, how sometimes the aisles are so packed Did you miss stuff?
Yep.
It wasn't that crazy packed. And everybody I talked to from, every brand was like, yeah, this was like the best the best supply side in years. So I'm hoping we have a bit more of that again this year. I imagine it'll bounce back even bigger.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's a great show.
Okay, good. I'm excited. I need to book tickets now probably and start getting that lined up.
It's funny, while we were talking, I got a text message that said, did you book supply side yet? Did you book a hotel room and supply side yet?
There you go. What's on the horizon for the rest of 2022 for y'all? And then I guess into 2023, do y'all have any new ingredients in the works or more research on current stuff in-house?
So we have yes to both. We're always working, as you commented earlier, we're always working on more studies on our ingredients, existing ingredients, and we have a pipeline of new products that we're working on. I suspect we won't see something new from in-house probably until 24, just based on how long it takes to develop an ingredient and bring it to market.
Okay.
But you'll probably, let's see, we have a study ongoing right now on Chromax. It's the first study we've done on Chromax in a while. And it should be interesting. It's looking at, again, healthy normals and effects on blood glucose levels, kind of a GDA study.
Cool.
That one should be pretty interesting. Additionally, a design for a new study on Lustriva, which is our beauty from within ingredient that we launched late last year that has really taken off. It's in the 9 years I've been at Nutrition21. It is the most successful launch I've ever seen. There's some really big products coming to market in the next year. Between Q4 and Q1, there's a lot of really great products coming to market. So we'll be doing more studies on that. And then, I think there's always room for other studies. There's been talk about additional Velositol research. I'm not sure where that is on the priorities list of all the other things that the R&D group has to execute on, but that's certainly very something I would like to see is more research there.
Yeah. And did y'all ever encounter any supply chain issues with getting enough of the raw materials, I guess, to synthesize and react these things together and make the ingredients in particular? Because we've heard about those issues all over the board with, just regular raws like creatine and citrulline and whey protein. So
so we manufacture in the U.S., but some of our inputs do come from abroad. But just the fact that we're manufacturing in the U.S. means we're way ahead of our supply chain to bring them in. So I think we were largely ahead. Now, absolutely saw massive increases in cost of our inputs, but we stayed in stock 100% throughout the entire pandemic. I think, we're probably we might be the only company that can say that and actually in the 9 years I've been here, we've never had an out of stock. Now I will say that at the height of the pandemic, we had to extend lead times on our zinc product, ZinMax, because there was such demand for zinc that we were saying, hey, we need 8 weeks lead time. But then we were still hitting those dates.
And so y'all make all the ingredients here in the States? All the ingredients are actually homegrown, or not homegrown, but they're either y'all are actually
manufactured. Yeah. The zinc is actually the one exception. We used to make that in the U.S. Unfortunately, we had to move it offshore for cost reasons, and so now it is made in India. But everything else manufactured in the United States, which is costly, but it also gives us unique advantages in terms of our supply chain. Plus, it's nice to be supporting American jobs, right?
Agreed. Especially if the past 2 years have shown us anything, it's that we kind of need to reinvest in American manufacturing.
Hardcore. 100%.
Yep. I'll get you out of here on this, Todd. What's your daily supplement regimen look like?
Oh my goodness. I should go up and grab it. So I take the Ghost Multi. I'll even give you brands in some cases. I take Ubiquinol every single day.
Mm-hmm.
I take Chromax every single day. I take ZinMax every single day. Let's see, what else do I take? I take an algal source DHA. I take I actually been taking maca since we introduced maca. Even though we no longer offer it, I still take maca because I like it.
Mm-hmm.
What else do we have? Pretty much every day I have a protein shake with Velositol in it. I take Nitrosigine or nooLVL on pretty much a daily basis. I always tell people, like, when I'm selling it, we have like these stick packs, that are just nooLVL or Nitrosigine that we hand out. And I tell people, I'm like, you know how like 2 o'clock your caffeine wears off and you're like, oh my God, how am I gonna make it through the day? Like, take, a nooLVL or Nitrosigine, see what you think. And it's phenomenal. Like it's great because it's like it gives you this great energy boost, but it's not a stimulant. I can still go to bed at night, right? So I pretty much take. I think that the sales team probably uses more of the sales tool personally than we actually give out.
Yeah, you've sent me a couple of those packs over a couple of years back. You sent me a bunch of those, and I remember I tore through those in rapid succession.
It's so convenient. It's so convenient. I actually would love to see somebody because like friends and family are always hitting me up for them, and I'm like, guys, I'm trying to run a business here. I can't just be like giving shit away. But I wish somebody would do like a standalone, a product like this, right? Just a 30-pack of them, right? Because then I could tell people like, here, go do this. But
is that something y'all would consider? Is just, and I've asked Matt this over at Compound several years back, of what about just releasing your own in-house line of ingredients, just the nutritional, like you just said, the 30-pack of that, but y'all sell it under you. That way you've got a high profit margin.
I think that an ingredient supplier should not compete against their customers.
Mm-hmm.
And no matter how I marketed this, if I were selling it, I'd be competing against my customers at some level.
Yeah, that's true.
So
that's a good argument.
Yeah, so I would rather, and there are standalone Nitrosigine products out there. I feel like there's 3. I can only think of one right now, but I feel like I think that there's 2 or 3. We try to limit the number of standalones because it quickly becomes with a branded ingredient, it becomes cost per serving, right?
Right.
So it's a race to the bottom. And I think most brands recognize that for the most part, standalone ingredients, if there's a lot of people having them, it's not. So I don't say I encourage it, but the one thing I would definitely encourage is like an easy to use, stick pack kind of thing.
Yeah. Because
it is so convenient. Like all of us walk around with them, and like everybody that works for Nutrition21 walks around with these things in their briefcase and like afternoon slump. Honest to God, like I swear we use it. You have to buy a lot of stick packs. You have to buy like 25,000 at a time, and I swear we probably use 15,000 of them in house.
Oh, that's awesome. Anything else you want to plug, Todd, before I let you go? I've kept you on for a good while here. Anything?
No problem.
Contact where people want to reach out to you or anything?
I mean, so our website, is set up obviously for brands, but consumers do come on and ask us questions through the site. To the best of our ability, we'll answer those. A lot of the times, people are asking questions that are health questions, and we're not doctors. We can't answer those kind of questions. But if it's a question about how something works, or where can I find this, and on our website you can connect to virtually all of the products that are offered. There's a where to find page where you can look up each of the products that are on there. By and large, if they're, I would say at any given time, we have 95% of the products that are available listed there. Yeah. And, I think that, if you wanted to get a hold of me directly, I'm not a big social user, but you can certainly, tag me on Instagram, or I'm never on Facebook. Instagram, you might be able to get a hold of me directly.
Okay,
so
perfect.
Yeah.
Awesome, Todd. Thank you very much, and we'll talk soon. Have a great day.
Thanks, you too, man. Take care.